Hello, welcome to another Ovadia Heart Health telemedicine live stream. And today I am privileged to have as my guest Stewart, a registered dietitian nutritionist. Um, and she's also a metabolic health educator known for her ability to break down complex science into simple, usable strategies. She's got a great presence on X and on Instagram and probably other platforms as well. I'll let her tell you where you can find her. I've been following her on X and Instagram for quite a while, and some great content. And she's got a great story. I know Temple started out as an athlete and encountered some issues and problems with respect to calories and the whole story. So I'm going to let her talk about that. But she reversed her own PCOS, lost 60 pounds, restored fertility naturally, and now helps women and men around the world overcome insulin resistance, stabilize blood sugar, rebalance hormones, and see progress after years of frustration. Before we get started, I need to put up our medical disclaimer, and then once we do that, we will be off and running. Anything that you hear or see today is for educational and informational purposes only, not a substitute for professional advice or treatment by a licensed healthcare professional. And if you want to reach out to anyone at Ovadia Heart Health, you can reach us at team@ifixhearts.com and someone will get back to you. And with that, we will get started. Temple, thank you for joining me today. And I would love it if you'd give our audience a little background on your story. I know you were a college athlete, and I know you achieved high levels of fitness. Tell us about the ups and the downs and the whole thing.
Yeah, Chris, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate you guys taking the time. I think my journey started a lot earlier than I talk about online. I was adopted, so there wasn't a lot of prenatal care. I'm not real sure of my family history, health, genetics, background, anything like that. But I had a wonderful childhood. I was raised in South Mississippi. And as you can imagine, that comes with a lot of very rich and sugary and high fat foods. And so I think my metabolic issues probably started when I was a child. The thing that masked them though is that I was a very, very active kid. I played a lot of sports. I got my hands into everything. I was constantly outside. And so I think because of that activity that followed me through high school and college, I think it kind of masked a lot of the symptoms that would have been very obvious had I, not been so active. So essentially, kind of what started out my journey in health was, one, I wanted to perform at the highest levels I could, but I also started to notice some things in my body that, even with no education in health or metabolic disease or anything like that, I thought, hey, this is really off. I was having a period. I would have a period like once every 6 months. I was getting a lot of the typical cystic acne, the chin hair growth, things that a 2-year-old, 21-year-old should not really be thinking about. Actually younger than that, 18 or so. And that's what really started getting me wondering, okay, what's going on with my body? And I started searching for answers. Fast forward a bit, I really got into some trouble when that activity kind of went away. That's when my symptoms really, it was like gas to the flame, really started gaining rapid weight after I got out of college and I was no longer playing sports. And, I was the first thing I did was schedule an appointment with an OB. And, I'm probably 60, 70 pounds overweight at this point. And that is when I got my diagnosis as, you have PCOS. This is a really common endocrine disorder. There's not much we do about it. Here's your metformin. Here's your spironolactone. Let's get you on birth control. Plan to come save money. I remember the conversation about saving money for IVF because it's going to be really hard for me to get pregnant. And that was kind of what I left with when I saw this OBGYN in Florida. And I remember I was just really disheartened. I was really discouraged. I felt like this, pills can't be the only answer. And, I decided to study nutrition in college thinking I was going to use it as like a sports dietitian. And in reality, my first patient was myself. And so that's kind of what started this long journey, and then I worked in the VA hospital for a long time and kind of saw the detrimental effects of sick care on my veterans and men and women who served our country, but we're now suffering with their health. And so, that's a very short story, but initially that's what got me kicked off into this world, was my own health and issues going on.
Yeah, I got so many questions for you. I'm curious for myself, and I think some of our audience would be interested as well. What sport did you play in college?
I was a soccer player. Yeah, I played center back.
Okay, so you were a good soccer player. You probably were a star in high school. And how was your college career?
My college career was okay. It was I would say it was kind of average. That was when my health, I would say my junior year of college was when I really started having problems with energy, and I was so lethargic. But yeah, I look back on those years and it was some of the best times of my life. I'm so grateful for my sports career. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun playing on a team for sure.
So, when you were studying to be a registered dietitian, is that something that you had thought about for a long time, that you wanted to be a registered dietitian?
No, honestly, it's funny. I think that I believe in a higher power. I think that there were some things that got me into that degree. I had no idea what it entailed. I barely knew that dietitians worked in a hospital. All I wanted was answers to my own health issues, and I knew that food either made me feel better or worse. I just couldn't figure out what the right thing to do was. And so I made the decision to go into dietetics as a sophomore in college. I think my first year I was studying, whatever they tell you to study, but I didn't have an idea. And I certainly didn't know that nutrition was actually going to be, medicine for me, in years to come. And I really am thankful for the journey, because, had I not had my own health issues, I would have never ended up in this space. But I also, I don't know that had I not become a dietitian, I don't know that I would have ever healed my own health issues. I think I would have stuck to the standard sick care, and lived in that, and never really accepted that there's an alternative and that we can change.
Your social media feed is fascinating to read. Can you help put a little bit put everything into chronology? Like, at what point did you solve your own health issues, and what was going on in your career at the same time? Like, did you figure it out for yourself first, or was it while you were treating patients? How did that all work?
Great question. Yeah. So I was slowly gaining weight my entire college or soccer career. By the time I was a senior, I was probably carrying 20 extra pounds. I went to go do my residency at a VA hospital in Florida, and I worked all areas. I did oncology, I did diabetes, I did cardiology, I did all the fun stuff. And at the same time, my weight just kept getting worse. These PCOS symptoms kept getting worse. And so it was about 2 years in, was when I got my hands on Dr. Jason Fung's book and Dr. Bickman's book. And that was when I thought, this is crazy. I was never taught this in school. This is against everything I've learned as a dietitian. But I've got to try it. Chris, are you there? Was that
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
end? Oh
I'm.
man, I don't know if that was on my end or your end.
I don't know, and I don't know what happened, but let's
So
let's
sorry.
continue. No, it's all good.
Yeah. So while I'm working in the VA hospital, I was working like side doing at the diabetes clinic. I was covering maternity leave and everything else. And I remember seeing these veterans coming in and just upping insulin, upping metformin, doing another oral agent, just never getting their A1Cs any better and never losing weight. And here I am also struggling with my weight, also with worsening symptoms, thinking, I'm teaching them everything I know as a dietitian. I'm doing everything I know to do that I was taught as a dietitian. Why is none of this working? And so it was out of frustration and desperation that I read these books, like I mentioned, The Obesity Code and Why We Get Sick. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it. And within a month and a half, I think my cycle returned. I started losing weight within the first couple of weeks, and I thought, okay, if this is going to work so well for me, why can't I implement this with my veterans? So I started implementing it with my veterans, and the results were astounding. So much so that I was having endocrinologists in other areas of the state send me their patients. So I was getting, patients in Tampa, Florida from, Newport Richey and all these other areas from different VA clinics because they were getting off their insulin. They were losing 60, 70, 80 pounds. And that was honestly when the light bulb in my brain went off, and I could never turn it off after that. After I saw the results that I could never get, even I was getting results in people in a month that would take me 2 years and nothing would happen in these same veterans. And I was just astounded at what was happening. People getting fully off medications and losing a ton of weight. It was just so shocking to me that was the change. That was the biggest moment in my career.
So back up for a minute. Tell us all that we have 170 people listening right now, and I know lots more are going to listen to the recording. What was it specifically that you gained, that you remember gaining from either the books by Jason Fung or Ben Bickman? What were the steps that you took that made the most profound change in your own personal life?
It was the insulin carbohydrate model of obesity for me. Is okay, this makes sense. This hormonal pathways makes sense to me. And it just clicked in terms of, okay, I'm just going to lower carbs a little bit and see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? And so I can remember the first thing I cut was just kind of like your typical white processed starchy stuff, like breads, pasta, rice, noodles. I didn't even do a deep dive into starchy vegetables and fruits and all that other stuff. And I'm not saying any of that's inherently bad, but I just remember even within the first week, I could feel my joints felt better. And I didn't feel like quite as puffy. And I remember thinking, wow, I haven't felt this good in years. And all I did was remove a little bit of carbohydrate. What could I feel like if I really went kind of full throttle into low carb keto? And, like I mentioned, again, the results were so fast and so good. And I felt so good. It's like the light went on and I could never, turn it off again.
So tell me more about your own personal progression. Was it after some period of time, did you go further into it, do some fasting or get more, lower the carbohydrates even further?
Yeah, I did. So I started more, I would consider it low carb. Now looking back, more like your 50 to 75 grams of total carbohydrate initially. Started feeling good. And then I was thinking, well, what will I get if I get into ketosis? So I got into ketosis. All within, 3 to 6 months time, I was having a regular cycle again. Mind you, remember previously my cycles were coming once every 6 months. I was now cycling monthly. The acne went away, but yes, it started low carb, went to keto within, a couple months. And then I actually did a stint with carnivore as well. Probably 3 to 6 months of carnivore. Felt great again. And then just decided, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to eat, even if it's frowned upon among my coworkers, even if a lot of people think it's really wacky at the VA, like I feel the best and the weight was coming off. And that was really all that mattered to me at that time.
Tell me how it changed, how you felt, your focus, your energy, anything else that changed in your life.
Yeah, I would describe it as like I had really lost my spark. I felt low energy. I had brain fog. I was getting tired like from 1 to 3 every day. I felt like I needed a nap. And here I am, I'm 20s, early 20s. Like, why do I need a nap in my mid-afternoon? That's the prime of my life. And so, the skin issues were horrible. Cystic acne, I was constantly putting on makeup to cover up acne. My hair was falling out. And so I had so much cosmetic change, but, even more than that, my moods improved, my motivation improved, my, joy, I say my spark came back because it really did. I found myself happy. And, something I left out too, like I'm a newlywed in all of this at the same time. And here I am coming home from the VA, when I hadn't found keto yet and low carb, and I'm taking naps 4:30 in the afternoon. I could barely keep my head up. And so it was just, it was miserable. I felt miserable. I felt like a stranger in my body. And keto took kind of that fog, that cloud that I was living in away. And I just felt like I got my spark back and I was the temple that I had remembered.
So you just made me think. You've written in your social media about the fact that you have two daughters, correct?
I do.
And one of them's adopted, and one of them is
Hmm.
biological. Um, can you tell us about that story? I assume that you struggled. You had PCOS. Tell us everything that there is to know about that you want to share about that.
Yeah, so my oldest is adopted from a foster care system in Florida. We got involved. My husband and I had a conversation. I'm adopted, so it was kind of my pay it forward. I knew that I'd always want to do that as a child, is give someone else the chance that I was given. And so we really weren't expecting to adopt so quickly, but we did, and she was the joy of my life, and it was even kind of funnier because we adopted her, and I had not known that I was pregnant at the time, because the cycle stuff gets all weird, but yeah, and then found out I was pregnant shortly after. And she's the joy of my life, and ultimately I want to avoid the health issues that I had with my girls. I raise them differently, they eat differently, we prioritize different things, because I don't want them to suffer through the things that I suffered. But yeah, I'm thankful for adoption, because it not only saved my life, it saved my daughter's. But I'm also grateful that my body got back to normal and was able to conceive and carry and breastfeed for years, and have a healthy pregnancy on my end. And so yeah, it's a wonderful experience to be a mom.
Oh, that's tremendous. I have two adopted brothers myself, and
Cool.
it's a wonderful thing. Um, the Let's see. What I'd like to know about is, with respect to your career, you started off early working at the Veterans Association
Hmm.
hospital. So what did you see in your early work as a dietitian? I'm guessing, based on what I've read and what you've said, that you've had some frustrations with the mainstream system. People don't fully embrace low carb, ketogenic, carnivore lifestyle, and for a number of reasons. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, and how things maybe have changed since you've kind of gone out on your own?
Yeah, so my first year as a dietitian, you already deal with like being very young and feeling like an imposter, and working in a very fast-paced and pretty intense medical system. The VA is, I wouldn't describe it as an easy. It's a great job, and I come from a large military family, so I loved my veterans. But all of them kind of had the same issues: these metabolic syndrome, the obesity, hyperlipidemia, hypertension, diabetes situation. And it kind of all looked the same, and it just was being treated in a way that I did not feel was serving them the best. It was all very reactive medicine, which I understand to a degree, but there was very little of, hey, we need to address the root cause of this. We need to fix the actual problem, instead of just continuing to up medications. And you know how the sick care system is it's very rushed. You don't have a lot of time with patients. There's certainly not a lot of dietitians giving low carb ketogenic information at all. In fact, I was barely taught that in my undergrad and residency. And so, it's just this kind of perpetual cycle that people get stuck in when they start to develop these diseases. And many of them never get out of it until they have a catastrophic event. And even then, a lot of times they still stay in. And so I was just seeing this same pathway for every veteran that I kept counseling. And it was breaking my heart, because I love them and I wanted to see them change. And I was seeing, family members in them in a lot of ways that were suffering with their own health issues. And I couldn't grapple with the only answer was more medications, and controlled carb is what we called it, but it was really a high carb diet. And so I just didn't want to accept that for them. And I also didn't want to be the type of provider that was only really just putting band-aids over everything and never actually changing the outcome of their health journey. And so that was really convicting for me, is like, okay, I'm now involved in a system that's not actually, it's saving lives, of course, in terms of your catastrophic events, a heart attack, stroke, all that. But in terms of preventative medicine and chronic disease, it really, the bar is really low. And so I didn't want to be lumped in with those providers. I wanted to be, create the change, right? I wanted to, help people feel free, feel like they weren't, just getting upped dosages, and feel like they weren't trapped in this cycle. of more and more meds. And so that was what ultimately led me to leave the VA, is that one, I was seeing a lot of people that didn't necessarily want to change. Or they didn't know that there was other options. And so morphing into a private practice dietitian is just, one, giving me the freedom to be able to talk about what I want to talk about. Two, it's giving me the training that I needed to do to really look at labs from a preventative medicine standpoint and not just a reactive standpoint. And it's also given me a lot of tools in terms of food really is medicine, and you can change so much when you change diet, lifestyle, and the way people are living. And so it's just given me so much more freedom and to be able to teach nutrition the way that I believe is correct and the way that I believe is going to impact people the most.
So what's the name of your business and where can people find information on it?
Yeah, it's called The Ketogenic Nutritionist, and I'm on every platform. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I have a website, but just search The Ketogenic Nutritionist and Temple Stewart, and all of it will come up.
And is there a web URL that you'd like to give, or
just my Instagram is my biggest,
okay,
where I give the most.
Great.
Free stuff.
So I'm guessing that you've learned a lot about people in general, say, settling for so much less in their lives than they have the potential to achieve, because they've been given misinformation, or they've been told that you can only do so much with lifestyle. And, obviously prescriptions are the popular way of treating a lot of things in mainstream medicine, because it can be done quickly and in a few minutes, rather than, talking about lifestyle with someone. Tell me a little bit about, a person do you have any words of wisdom for a person who is sort of trapped in a suboptimal life as to where they can begin to sort of turn the thing around, particularly coming from the experiences that you've had in your own personal life? What do you think are the most important factors for getting started?
Yeah, I always encourage my clients and patients to look at what's going to make the biggest impact first and what's going to be realistic. So a lot of times people get really overwhelmed. They don't know where to start, or maybe it all just feels too overwhelming and they get kind of analysis paralysis. But I tell them, do a quick look at your lifestyle, your dietary habits, your lifestyle habits, and what area is causing the most damage and or causing you to backtrack on your health journey. And let's tackle that first. So, maybe it's going from a 6-pack of soda a day to, one diet soda or something, and figure out what is the realistic meet in the middle goal there. And let's start there. I think a lot of times people think that they have to overhaul everything at once. And I think by doing that can sometimes cause people to, one, get overwhelmed, but two, also burn out with change. And so I just tell people, focus on the thing that's going to make the most impact right now. If your blood sugar is high, it's going to be lowering carbohydrate. It's going to be lowering your sugar, sugary drinks and sugary coffees and all that. So I really try to partner with my clients and figure out, what are you doing? What's a habit or dietary habit, lifestyle habit that is worsening your health, and does it feel realistic to tackle? Let's do that first.
Excellent advice. Tell me a little bit about some misconceptions that you perceive. I'd love to start with calories in, calories out, versus the idea of thinking about and concentrating on insulin levels and the foods that contribute to problems, hunger, satiety, cravings. What can obviously there's still a large group of people out there in mainstream medicine and nutrition who seem to be focused primarily, at least at the first recommendation, on reducing calories as the foundational element to improving one's health. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think that there is there's a middle ground we can all meet at, right? And that is the way that most dietitians are taught. All dietitians are taught calories in versus calories out. But what I tell people and how I explain to people is that your hormones are going to dictate what your body does with calories. And so that, and your body is not this, metabolic machine that a calorie measures one unit. It just doesn't work like that, where it's predictable in every single human across the lifespan all the time. And so I think that the calories in versus calories out model is very simplistic. But the way that I teach it is that your hormones dictate what happens with those calories, where they're stored, how long they're stored, if they're used, where they go, etc. And so if you don't have your hormone and metabolic state in a good place, it does not use those calories appropriately. And so I think that I do think that calories matter in the extent that I don't think you can eat as many calories as you want all the time, overgorge yourself all the time, and expect good health outcomes. But I also think when your body's in a healthy place, lots of lean muscle mass, low levels of circulating insulin, etc., you handle calories much better than you do when you're in a hormonally dysfunctional state.
Yeah, would you like to talk a little bit about insulin resistance, how one could improve it, and the idea that just because you have what appears to be, quote, healthy blood glucose numbers at a given time, or even a healthy A1C, why you still might have some concerns moving forward?
Yeah, correct. It's true. And I tell people when we look at labs, we always want to look at several of them, not just glucose and A1C. And a lot of people think they're in a safe zone because their, glucose is acceptable and their A1C is acceptable by conventional medicine standards. One, I would argue with conventional medicine standards in general, I think they're too high across the board for A1C and glucose. Two, those labs may not be affected 10 to 15 years down the road of living with insulin resistance. And so it's a very delayed and reactive lab. I'm not saying we don't look at it at all, because I do think it can be helpful, but I think that too many people have too many eggs in their basket of A1C and glucose, and they think they're at healthy levels, and they're truly not, and their insulin sky high. And so what I like to look at in general when I'm looking at someone's metabolic panel when it comes to insulin is I like to see a fasted insulin. I like to calculate a HOMA IR. C-peptide can be helpful, and then look at that in context of A1C and glucose as well. And what is this individual complaining of? Are they having weight loss resistance? Are they having hyperglycemia or symptoms, etc.? And so, A1C and glucose are just so behind that if you're not taking some of these other labs, you're going to be behind as well. And unfortunately, conventional medicine is not going to flag that until you're quote unquote in a disease state. I don't like the word pre-diabetes. I think if you're pre-diabetes, you might as well have it. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, you're not high enough for us to do anything about it, but it just feels like a ridiculous stance to me. And so I want to catch people when they're even walking towards the ledge, right? I don't want to wait until we have a real problem to try to fix it, because it's much harder. And so that's what I would encourage people to do is get the right labs. Make sure you've got someone who understands optimal levels looking at them, and is not going to let you get to pre-diabetes before they say, oh, hey, this is about time for you to cut carbs. It just happens so much later with A1C and glucose. It's just not a good thing to only focus on.
Oh, great. Excellent information. I want to take a short break here to let everyone know, that all of our listeners, Dr. Ovadia asked me to show his book and let people know that if they go to ifixhearts.com/livestream, you can get a free digital copy of the book just by going to that page and entering in your info. It's a great book. I've read it multiple times, and you can get a copy of the digital download for free. So ifixhearts.com/livestream. And Temple, tell us again where we can find you online. I know you're on Instagram. I know you're on X. Where else?
Yep, I'm on TikTok. Yep, all my handles are all at the.ketogenic.nutritionist, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. So yeah, y'all can find me on any of those. And I do try to respond to all my comments and messages. It's a full-time job with that, but if y'all have questions or anything, I do encourage people to reach out.
I'm curious, as someone who has a presence on social media, you do a great job on social media. Do you have any secrets to your success on Instagram? Any things you learned over the years as you developed a large audience and you create very compelling, useful content?
Man, that's a hard question. Yeah, I would say number one, don't be afraid to share your story. I think that is most relatable. I feel like the people really relate when you're honest and open. I think we live in such a digital AI age. I think this is only going to become more true as everything gets more fake online. It's hard to tell who's real person and whatever else. And so I've always shared my story. I've always been honest about what I'm going through or what my labs are saying or what I'm trying with this. And so I always try to share some of that with my audience, and just never lose the people side of things, and then of course just staying up with what's going on, the social trends, and the trending audio. It truly is making content that helps people, but you also have to do it in a way that it gets shared. It's a challenge, but it's a lot of fun, and I've
Do
met
you,
so many wonderful people as well.
I was going to ask you about that. Do you find that you learn from your audience?
Often, yeah. In fact, I learn the most from my audience and my clients. I watch their stories. I watch, we all kind of share the same health goal in a way, but they have a lot of different things going on, or they're struggling with something that I never have had to deal with. And so it's an extremely humbling experience. And I truly love it. I think my clients and, the social media audience online is just so kind and so supportive. And, it makes you almost feel really human when you're kind of in that space, because it's just a great community. It really is.
Let's see. Are there any other areas in particular that you think are important for people? There's a lot of people that are on social media who maybe don't say a lot. They're listening in the background. They're watching. People that are trying to get enough courage to take that first step. Anything in the area of general advice or misconceptions that you would like to clear up or to help clear up?
I would tell people to share their story. I think if people are hesitant to go online in general, I think sharing your story is the most powerful thing for you and for others, especially, if you've overcome something or found something that works or whatever. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think, had I just accepted my fate with my first OBGYN, I think I never would have found low carb. I never would have found keto. I don't even know how long I would have stayed a dietitian. I felt like such an imposter, but I think that, holding on to that, there's an answer somewhere. It may just take a little bit of time to get there, is something to feel encouraged about. And that, there's an answer. You just got to keep looking, and don't give up. Even if you mess up, don't give up. Slip ups happen. I had many on my weight loss journey, and it's a part of it. And give yourself a little bit of grace and pick yourself back up and keep on moving. And that goes for social media as well.
In social media, I was wondering if you, especially early on, ever had situations where, you got negative comments or criticisms that were surprising or caught you off guard, or maybe even really got you down or depressed or made you want to walk away from it?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I would say social media, a lot of comments can turn very quickly to your appearance. And I think especially as a female, that can be a really hard thing to accept. I share a lot of my before pictures, and my before pictures were almost 13 years ago, and so yes, I've aged. I've gotten wrinkles. I've had children. I've third year medical school. I've got all these things. And so I think the appearance comments are hard. That has given me quite a bit of a thick skin of first of all, knowing your worth is not in your appearance, right? Your values and morals and all of that. We don't judge on the outside, we judge on the inside. And so I think that was a really hard one to get over. Just the fact that I'm a ketogenic dietitian, I've gotten a lot of flack for, because that is kind of a rebel way. I'm sure you guys know all about that with what Dr. Ovadia does and what with you guys do. It really is breaking the mold of conventional medicine. And so there's always going to be people out there that don't like that or want to come after you for that. But yeah, I will say sharing your life online does come with drawbacks, and some of that is the negative people. But I always remind myself, one, I have no idea what they're going through. And if you're that mean to a stranger online, it must be something bad, right? And so it has given me a bigger sense of empathy for people that lash out in that way, for sure.
Yeah, it's a learning experience. And I know in my own experience that learning how to share and be authentic was one of the most important things that I learned probably 7 years ago. And, I actually asked my small audience at the time. I had been talking a lot about low carb, and I asked, when I was diagnosed with cancer, I asked if people would mind if I shared something different than low carb. And I actually, I just put that question out there, and I was almost blown away because that was one of my more engaging tweets, and people were like, yes, definitely share. And then the support that I received, and I got some crackpots along the way. I got some weird comments and some unhelpful ones, but 90+% was overwhelmingly positive and supportive, and taught me a lot about how most people are helpful and mean well, and you can kind of learn to ignore. Yeah, it's a good thing to experience and get a little thicker skin, as you said before. Once you get to that point, you're in a place where you can really benefit from sharing and hearing what people have to say. And I personally get the best learning experience for me is when people ask questions about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I don't always have the answer. And it bothers me, because if I'm doing something, I should be able to answer them right off what I'm doing. But it makes me take a step back and figure out a coherent way to explain what I'm doing and why. Or if I can't, maybe I should be reconsidering what I'm doing. So I was just kind of wondering if you shared some of those experiences along the way, and it sounds like you kind of have.
I absolutely have it. Yeah, you make a great point. It really is kind of like defending your faith a little bit. It's like when you get questions like that, it makes you reevaluate. Okay, well, why do I believe that? And it'll either strengthen it, or it'll keep you, going back and looking for something else or looking for a different answer. So I agree. I think that is a good learning state to live in.
So let me take this opportunity to ask you a little bit about what you do specifically with women and hormones. Maybe like a quick overview on what some of the problems that you see recurring, and how you help people with those problems.
Yeah, and great question, because I think a lot of women try to spot treat their hormones and don't realize a lot of times the thing that's dysregulating their hormones is upstream a bit, and it's insulin. And so a lot of times, especially online, you'll see people hyper focusing on cortisol, or hyper focusing on thyroid, or hyper focusing on low progesterone, or whatever the case may be. And a lot of those things will not correct, or they will be very difficult to correct if you are living in an insulin resistant inflammatory state. So I would say I see a lot of PCOS. I see a lot of fertility issues, because that is unfortunately one of the first things that people deal with when it comes to insulin resistance. Ovaries become deaf to normal hormonal signaling in that high insulin state. You typically get low progesterone, like I already mentioned. You get these high androgens. And so you start to see women develop the symptoms of that, infertility being one of them. They start to get hair on their face and losing on their head. You get cystic acne, oily skin, estrogen gets really wacky. It can, insulin will affect the way that estrogen clears from the liver. And so there's just thyroid tends to slow down. Cortisol gets really funky. And so I say all that to say is that when I work with my clients, the first thing I'm fixing is insulin, because without that, everything else will not fall into line, no matter how much I try. And you see that a lot with normal pharmacological treatment of PCOS, right? We try to fix that high androgens. We try to fix the LH signaling, or whatever you want to call it, but nobody will address the insulin resistant, or the root cause of the disease. And these individuals still struggle with fertility. They still have PCOS symptoms long term. And so, yeah, that would be what I would say is I fix insulin first. I look for inflammation first, and then we kind of triage down the line of, okay, what do we need to focus on next?
Another question I have is the role of resistance training in your mind for metabolic health, insulin resistance and improving it, and overall health.
If I could I think diet and resistance training are the two most powerful levers we have when it comes to affecting your health and longevity, period. I think women tend to never pull the resistance training lever because they're scared of getting bulky or whatever else. And that is just so far from the truth. And oftentimes it is the icing on the cake when it comes to results. So in many women, we'll fix everything in the diet. They'll be in full ketosis and they're still not getting the results they want because they live in such a lack of lean body mass. They don't have muscles. Muscles are your greatest user of glucose, period. They will make you insulin sensitive. And it is so critical that we keep muscle on our bodies as we age, especially as females. And this one gets missed a lot. I think fitness trends, unfortunately, have not always helped women in that range either. I think a lot of fitness trends have gone more high intensity cardio and lots of walking, which I love walking, more running, and then they just kind of skip over this muscle building, and it is massive. It's massive for men as well, but I think it's one of the longevity pieces and health pieces that we have brushed aside, and for women, it's not an option. And I tell my clients it is. I'm sorry, I should have said it's not optional. We have to incorporate it in with what we're doing. And again, oftentimes this is the thing that really changes the game for my clients. They will be so on their diet. They'll be 80-90% of the way there diet wise. The minute they implement resistance, muscle training, etc., their health outcomes start to change. Their labs start to change really rapidly. And so again, it is a critical piece of the puzzle. And I am such a proponent of weightlifting for women, and not even just weightlifting, but really any, muscle resistant building type training, whatever you'll stick to, do it. That's what I want you to do.
That's great. And it's kind of interesting because I know you mentioned Dr. Ben Bickman earlier, and I had been interested in resistance training for a long time, mostly for vanity purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And I met Dr. Ben Bickman at one of the symposiums for Metabolic Health, and we had a little conversation, and he emphatically stated that the correlation between muscle mass and strength to longevity and health span is undeniable. And he made such a strong case that I didn't forget that. And I know now, as in my role as a health coach at Ovadia Heart Health, we talk to every single patient about resistance training and the importance. With that and what you've just said, do you have any sort of recommendations? What kind of resistance training do you have your clients do if you have your way?
Yeah. So if I could set up the ideal scenario, we're doing some form of progressive overload, safe and appropriate for that individual, right? And there's a zillion different ways to do that. I prefer, especially as a patient or client is aging, to avoid some of your higher injury style working out, your CrossFit types. I don't think any of that is bad. I just think that's maybe not the first step. I think, I use a lot of free apps with my client. Fit On, Ladder is a great app. There's so much resources and so many different ways you can do it, but I prefer my clients to lift heavy things and make them heavier as you can, even if that means you start out with body weight, right? Do it in a way that your form is good, that you're safe, but don't just stop at the 5 pounds. Don't just stop at your little 2.5s. Like, let's build some muscle. Let's protect your body, your brain, your metabolism, your hormones. I'm a huge proponent, like you guys, of getting everyone doing some form of it that they can stick to.
Oh, excellent. So let's see. I'm wondering along the way, as you've practiced as a dietitian, nutritionist, and I guess, in your role, you're sort of you're coaching at the same time, right? It's in that role with patients and clients. Have you noticed any characteristics among those patients or clients that sort of determine to some extent whether they're going to be successful or not when it comes to sustainably implementing lifestyle changes?
Yeah. And I think you guys probably run into this too. I can usually tell pretty quickly, even if I'm on a discovery call with a client, if they are in the stage of change where they're going to implement things. I get a lot of, hey, I'm thinking about this. I get a lot of contemplation. Hey, I'd really like to lose weight, but I don't know if the sacrifice is going to be worth it. Especially now around the holidays. I always find it very interesting when I do discovery calls around the holidays. It's interesting to see where people put themselves in the priority list and their health in the priority list. And so I say that to say, yes, I think when you can catch people in the stage of change where they are really eager, they're motivated, they're looking at things that aren't just cosmetic. They're like, hey, I just had a grandkid. I want to be around for my grandchild. Or, hey, I just beat breast cancer. I don't want to do that again. Or I could go on. And the scenarios that I found my clients are most successful is one when they have a spousal support or friend or accountability, some form of other human doing it with them. And studies back this up as well. Groups, something where you're both trying to achieve said goal. That is very successful. You get higher success rates. You also get higher success rates in people that track measurements. And a lot of people don't like to hear this online. A lot of people may not have the best relationship with the scale. It doesn't have to be the scale, but you need to have some form of, hey, we're moving in the right direction, whether it's lab work, whether it's a tape measure, whether it's, hey, these pants fit a little bit better, a week later. So you need to have some measurable outcome as well. And so that, and then I would tell people the third thing is make realistic goals. If you're not working out 1 day a week, why are we setting a goal to work out 7 days a week for an hour and a half? It's just not realistic. It's not going to fit in. And then you're going to do it for a week and you're going to give up or you're going to get injured. So I tell people, let's start with something that's legitimately realistic. Hey, 1 to 2 times a week. Ideally, we're moving that to 2 to 3, right? But let's start where we can. And I would say those are the 3 biggest things in clients that see the most success with my program and when I work with them in general is, do they have a form of accountability? Are they tracking something? And are their goals realistic, smart goals, if you will?
Yeah. And I think you mentioned support as well. And I know, man, you really hit some good ones. Those are all things that come up in my work with patients at Ovadia. A lot of the most successful patients will have a spouse actually on the call. And I can tell that they're in this together and that they are both doing everything they can to make it work. And if you have someone else involved, not as you can't do it for someone else. You can't do it just because of someone else. But if you're actually collaborating together on a project, the chance of it succeeding. And I know from my own personal experiences, and you may have similar experiences in your life where, whether it's signing up for my first marathon with my wife and, sitting down and finding a plan and printing it off and getting a yellow highlighter and getting ready to X off the boxes, 18 weeks in a row, 4 workouts a week, it's like, what is that, like 75 or something runs. And you don't look at it like just that you're getting to that destination. You're enjoying the trip along the way. And I think with a weight loss or a health plan, you're not trying to, lose 50 pounds for August 15th for this occasion. You're trying to improve your life and continue with it for forevermore after. And so you made some great points there. So is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? We're getting close to the end, but I definitely want to give you a chance to bring anything else up that you have learned along the way. Any words of wisdom you'd like to leave our listeners, which we have almost 500 people listening now?
Wow. Yeah. No, I would, I can't think of anything specific, but I would encourage people that no matter where you are in your journey, no matter what you've got going on, whether it's, chronic disease or you're just starting out, there's hope in what you're going through health-wise, all of the above. There's answers, like I mentioned earlier. Don't just settle for what's given to you in the conventional medicine system. There can be healing. I believe in the body's innate ability to heal. And so I just encourage people, don't give up. Even if you have a hard day, a hard week, a hard month, don't give up, because there's a lot of hope at the end of the tunnel. And it feels good. It feels good to achieve your goals. It feels good to make a change in that way. And so, yeah, I don't know. I hope that that's encouraging.
It's very encouraging. And I really encourage everybody to follow Temple on, I spend a lot of my time on X, but if you're on Instagram, which I know a lot of people are, she's got an even bigger audience on Instagram, and she makes really good posts. Like the content, on Instagram, a lot of people go there just for the pictures. Your pictures are great. The content that goes along with them is well worth reading. And say the name again, because I know some people are fading in and out. And
sure, yeah. It's at the.ketogenic nutritionist, and my first name is Temple, and I'm the only one that pops up, so that you can put that in there. And yeah, I'm grateful for this audience. It sounds like you guys have a lot of really motivated people listening and wanting to learn, and that's awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I want to just let people know once again, if you want to get Dr. Ovadia's book, Stay Off My Operating Table, it's a great read. You can get a free copy of the digital download if you go to ifixhearts.com/livestream. And Temple, thanks for taking a good chunk of your afternoon out to talk with our audience and share all the things that you've learned as a registered dietitian and nutritionist. And you're inspirational and you have a great story. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thank you.
And thanks everybody who listened, and we will be back next week. Take care.